Hi guys, welcome to another Monday Mini Talk, the show where we talk all things Warhammer and other hobby related stuff. And this week I wanted to talk about the controversy. And oh man, there has been a lot of it pretty much for the last 8 months. As a little disclaimer, this is not a defense of GW, the whole release of the old world was an undeniable screw up and the whole thing just smells like a lack of confidence and fear of a little loss from the Games Workshop. And it is just sad to see it. But let's just get into it. It all started with an article on Warhammer community about the core factions and legacy factions. And everyone was really surprised and angry and all that internet stuff, and then everyone forgot about it. Just to be again surprised and angry when the release happened. What am I talking about is the fact that with the release of Warhammer The Old World, and basically release of Warhammer Fantasy Battles, we got only 9 factions out of like 16 or 17. So we got Bretonnia, Tomb Kings, Dwarves, Empire, High Elves, Wood Elves, Orcs and Goblins, Beastmen and Warriors of Chaos. Now these factions are the only one legal in the tournament play, which is itself basically a redundant sentence, but they are also the only one getting their rules and probably new models with their arcane journals. Now GW made the argument that it is because of the setting and the time period of the actual launch. That this time frame is about the invasion of the Cetra, and the legacy factions did not participate in this story. Now a lot of people took it as these factions are basically dead, which is understandable, but I do believe is wrong. Let me be clear, there is a still real chance that GW are going to pull a Class A bullshit, and these factions are dead. And that possibility is and always was real. But let's talk about the option that all of this is just a marketing phrase. And this is the pre-written and mandatory reaction for these questions passed by the upper management. So let's take the idea that yes, we are in a Border Princes setting where all of the so far known to us story is happening. According to the narrative, Cetra invades Border Princes and continues into invading Bretonnia, as they are the only real threat to him at this time and are actively opposing him. We know from the lore that it actually happened, and that he got defeated and pushed back. Now, we do not know how it happened, we just know that it did. So, for example, let's say that Cetra invades Bretonnia and kills the King Leon Orc Slayer, because at this point Leon is old and about to die according to the old lore. And then the Cetra is pushed back by the combination of the good forces. Or we might be looking at the first surprise from the GW, because according to the old lore, Cetra at basically the similar time invades Norska, and that is where he actually got killed, or destroyed, or his body got destroyed. This might play out pretty much the same, or we might get the Norska invasion into Bretonnia, where these two meet, and the story plays out the same. Now it doesn't have to be like that, but it would not be the worst thing to happen, because it gives us two possibilities. Cetra gets killed, but he's a Tomb King, so he might get resurrected in Camry with a new beautiful model, which is a great way of doing that, a great narrative way of doing that. But we might also get something that everyone has always been asking for, like forever, and that is playable Norska faction in the fantasy setting. Now, you see where I'm going with this. We have great options in the setting, but it is pretty much impossible to flesh them out all at once. They just don't have the ability to do that, and it is a wrong business decision. From this point of view, you do a small release driven by the narrative, because that is what everyone wants, and if the launch goes well, you expand, again by driving the narrative forward. We know for a fact that GW did not anticipate it this much first for the old world, and even they are surprised how fast it sold out. So we are probably staying for a while. So let's just get back to the legacy factions. For you who don't know, these are Lizardmen, Dark Elves, Skaven, Ogres, Vampires, Demons and Chaos Dwarfs. And GW gave us pretty good reasons why they are not in the setting. Basically just narrative or story-driven reasons why they're not in the setting. But the thing is, with the progression of the story, they probably will be included. We know, for example, that the cafe is in works as a tabletop army. And if the old world does well, they will be released at some point in the future, in the far, far away future. That means they have to make the scope a lot larger, and you just cannot release the cafe without Ogre Kingdoms, because the story of these two factions is very close to each other. And from the main rulebook, we know cafe is in place since there are chapters dedicated to the Celestial Dragon. But we don't have to go that far, because Kislev, for example, is also in plans, as we know, and they can be introduced with the Norska, as we talked about it. Or can be introduced with the Chaos Dwarfs, or some joint story with the regular dwarfs holds. Plus we know the Great War is coming, slowly but surely, and you want the Kislev to be ready for the Siege of Prague. And at the same time as the Great War, or a little bit before, we got the great invasion of Ulthuan by the Dark Elves. That is why they were not present in the Great War and just sent Teclis and the two other bozos. So that is a great point of introduction for the Dark Elves. So you see, there is a very good way to introduce a lot of these factions into the main game. But the whole thing will be heavily story driven, which is up to you to decide if you like it or not. The sure thing is that for now we are set with the 9 factions we have and the 7 expansions in the form of arcane journals ahead of us. And as we saw with this release, we are in for a wild ride, especially if Games Workshop does not increase the production of pre-orders. And that leads to a second great controversy about the old models, which is understandable. Some people do not want to spend their money on old minis, and some just don't care. Everyone is entitled to their own opinion and how they want to approach this hobby, but it is no reason to shit on other people on the internet. And as a person who has been painting a shitload of old minis in plastic and even metal recently, I have enjoyed it very much. Of course, I want the new shiny stuff, and a lot of units have options for new stuff if you look at the AOS range. Once I have the books in my hand, I will make a video theorizing about what new units or models each faction might get, and what are we looking for at the release of the Arcane Journal, but for now that is all of my ramblings for today. I'm still working on a lot of old minis for the release videos, and pushing my dwarfs to be ready to march on the table again. But now that is all from me. Like, subscribe and share the video, and I will see you very, very soon. Bye.